This is a cute little bunny, all printed on my 3D printer, so I'm ready for Easter. Good morning, everybody. It's Stephen here for Bland Designs and the Idiot Quilter, because I have changed my title to include that. And welcome to my weekly vlog. This is vlog number 207 for March the 15th, 2021. 369 days of COVID. Maybe they should make that into a song. I don't know. Well, anyways, you saw my little bunny that I did on my 3D printer. I'm going to talk more about that and other things about 3D printing later on in today's vlog. And we're going to talk about what I've been doing, and we're going to talk about the retreat that's coming up, only 5 days away. And yes, lots of other things. So let's jump right in with my current project. It's behind me. You have seen this one before, but now it is completely finished. This is what I call my Celtic quilt because of the fabric. This is completely my own design, and it is now quilted. It was made over from leftover pieces from another quilt that I made using these fabrics. The fabrics are Northcott Stonehenge. It's a line I really like. And yeah, I basically made it up out of my head as I went along, and it's now all quilted, and I used that quilting template that I showed you last week. Had mixed feelings about that, and I'm going to delve into that in more detail on tomorrow's Idiot Quilter episode. So if you're interested about that template and whether it works or not, I'll be talking about that then. So yeah, I'm really pleased with the way it turned out. And you can't see it, but that's what the back looks like, and you can see the quilting on the back when you're up close. I used a fairly light thread in this quilt because it's so busy to start with the fabrics that I really didn't want the quilting to add any more complexity to it. So that's all done, and I'm happy about it, so that's great. Okay, the other thing I did was some machine embroidery. Now, I have another story about my Janome 15,000, which I talked a little bit about that yesterday on Stephen and Walter Live. So I'm not going to talk much about it today, but I will talk about it fairly extensively in tomorrow's Idiot Quilter. So if you're interested, tune in to that. But I did make this, and it's a little umbrella which you can do many things with it. It can be a table decoration. And I see it's a very sunny day here in Ontario. So we are, well, we're getting close to the first day of spring. So I think it turned out quite nice. It's very cute. You could use it. I've seen pictures where people use it as a candy holder. And I might do that. If I get a chance to get over to the dollar store or whatever, I might fill it up with some of those Cadbury cream eggs or whatever, things like that. I don't know. We'll see. But you know, I love machine embroidery. This is actually freestanding applique. There is another pattern in the grouping that I bought that's strictly freestanding lace, so no fabric whatsoever in it. So I may work on that later today. I have a lot of things to do today, so we'll see. But I really like it. I think it turned out cute. And if you're interested in where the embroidery design came from and details about that, again, tune into the Idiot Quilter tomorrow. Okay, so that takes us to YouTube channel of the week, and I know that all of us have been binge watching a lot of shows on all of the streaming sites like Netflix and Prime and Crave and whatever else you get in your area. So there is a YouTube channel dedicated to people who have Netflix about what's coming up and what's new. And I watch this every now and then because this person who does it mentions things that I've never heard of before that I might be interested in. So here's my review. This week's YouTube channel is for those of you that enjoy Netflix. And who doesn't enjoy Netflix? I think everybody has Netflix these days. In fact, I use Netflix and watch it more than I do regular cable TV. But I have found this YouTube channel called Flick Connection very useful. I watch this about every month, once a month, and the man who puts this up, he actually reviews all the current shows and movies that are coming to Netflix. He also tells you when some are going to run out in case you wanted to see it before it is no longer on Netflix. His reviews I take with a grain of salt because obviously he has different tastes than I do, but I do find it very informative. I usually make a list of some of the shows that he is talking about that otherwise I wouldn't know were going to appear on Netflix. So if you're looking for sort of a TV guide to Netflix, I suggest you check out Flick Connection. So the link to Flick Connection is in the show notes below. There's the link to Stephen and Walter Live. We just about missed our own show this week. Yeah, we kind of forgot all about the time change here in Ontario. We sprung ahead 1 hour at 2 a.m. Sunday morning, and we didn't think anything of it. One thing, we didn't hear anything about it on the news. Now, mind you, we do not watch regular network television, although at lunchtime during the week, I usually tune in while we're having a sandwich to one of our local Toronto stations. And usually on those, they tell you about the time change, but I don't think I watched it on Friday, and that's probably when they really did it. And a funny thing was, I woke up the other morning thinking, I wonder when the time change is going to be. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking that it used to be in March, but I thought that our government had moved it for some strange reason to April. And I thought nothing more of it. So, about an hour before we were to go on air, I'm laid out on the couch watching a Netflix series, and Walter comes down and goes, what time does your watch say? And I said, it was 2 something. And he goes, no, it's almost, or 3 something. He says, no, it's almost 4 o'clock. He says, the time changed and we forgot all about it. I went, oh crap. So off we ran to the computer to get ourselves set up for Stephen and Walter Live, and we were on in time. But boy, that gives you a real sinking feeling, doesn't it? When you suddenly realize that, well, I'm glad that I didn't have a strict appointment to get to and had forgotten that, because I would have been a little late. But anyways, we got it up on the air, and there it is. And we did it in another new location. We did it from my craft room. And we think this setup is the better one. But I was, I did a little preview of it, or actually a review of it, after it went live. And I'm not that happy with the sound. So I may have to plug in an external microphone for when we do it next. But it's a little easier for us to be able to look like we're looking at people instead of our eyes down looking at iPads or way up here at this, because we're trying to see the comments. And so the setup in my craft room, lighting is better in the craft room as well. This is the craft room, okay? So I think we're going to continue doing them from the craft room as well. I did like using the kitchen though. It was a little bit more comfortable sitting. We're sitting on bar stools up against, our countertop kind of a thing. But the lighting in there is just not right. We always had that lovely heavenly haze hanging on us. So anyways, you can check it out and see what you like. And there's a link to last week's Idiot Quilter episode. So that takes me to what's pissing me off. And actually, there is nothing pissing me off this week. I'm a little frazzled, and that has to do with the retreat. So I thought I'd use this time spot right now to bring you up to speed on the retreat. Now, many of you are attending the retreat, and that's great. And if you're not, you may be on the waiting list, or it's just not your cup of tea, and that is fine as well. But I thought I'd bring you up to speed about what's been happening with the retreat from my perspective. Now, I'm not complaining about this. I love doing this kind of thing. I really do. It reminds me of my days as a teacher as well, the planning, the prep, the whole bit. I'm also a very, very organized person, so I have a lot of paperwork. I actually have a whole binder dedicated to the retreat. I'll show you. This is my retreat binder. And in here, I have everything organized by the topic, people, things, whatever I need to do. So this is my Bible for the retreat. The other thing about creating a binder as you're working through all this stuff for the first time is that you now have a record that you can build upon if you ever run this kind of thing again. And that's what I intend to do. So I just want to tell you about the process, just so you have an idea and why I'm getting a little frazzled. Now again, this is not a negativism, okay? This is just me explaining to you how it works. So, as you know, the retreat is free. Yeah, not a problem there. What did I have to do? Well, I had to put out the announcement about the retreat to get people. I had to find sponsors for the retreat, and I found excellent sponsors, and they have come through for me with flying colors. I can't say too much about Ultimate Sewing, Class Act, and Chatterbox Quilts. It's just, they've been excellent. So I really appreciate their support because everybody loves prizes, right? Then I had to sit down and I had to register people. And you have seen, those of you that are registered, you have seen the various updates that I have sent out over the last few weeks as well. But here's what happens now. I gave until today for people to let me know if they couldn't, for whatever reason, life gets in the way, can't attend the retreat. And I'd simply, well, thank you for letting me know. So I have a little blurb that I cut and paste into an email, send it off to them so they know that I know that they can't come to the retreat. I remove them from my master registration list. I pull up my waiting list. I take the first name at the top of the waiting list. I transfer that information, which is their name and their email, into the registration list. I go into my email account. I have a mailing list set up with everybody that's registered for the retreat, their emails. I go in, I remove the person that canceled their email. I put in the email for the person that was on the waiting list, save that file, send the new person a message that tells them they're in, and also brings them up to date because I've copied all the other updates to that same message that I've been sending out to the people who have been on the registration list so that they're up to speed. There's a lot of paperwork going on here, and I don't want to screw it up because I have 90 people. Okay, so it is very easy when you're dealing with that. Then I got the bright idea that I should have been really asking for where people are located, just as a survey, because I have them from all over North America, and I do have some from overseas as well. And I just thought it'd be nice to do a little statistic as to, where the bulk of people come from and how far reaching our retreat is. So I'd sent out an email about a week and a half ago or so asking for that information. So that information's been coming into me. I had to go into my master registration sheet. I had to update that information as well. Then I was also asking, and today's the deadline, for one picture of a quilt or a crafting project that is a favorite, because I'm creating a quilt show. Well, I've had overwhelming response for that. In fact, to the point where I've had to divide the quilt show into 2 segments because it would just be too long. The day would be over by the time we got through all of them, kind of a thing. So I have done them in a way that will make it, it'll run, each one runs for about 7.5 minutes. Okay, so that's good. But when people send those in to me, I have to copy the picture into another directory. I have to label it with the person's name. I have to indicate on my master registration list that they sent me a picture. I have to drop it into the PowerPoint presentation. The PowerPoint presentation has to be converted to a file that I can run in high definition, and back and forth. It's not hard, but it is a little time consuming, and worst of all is you can screw up, and I'm trying not to screw up. I am sure with all my planning that there will be a screw up here or there, but I'm trying to minimize those screw ups, okay? So that is still ongoing. I just updated one of the slideshows this morning before I started recording this. And yeah, and I still have people that are canceling and putting other ones on waiting lists and things like that. Now, just as a little word, and again, I'm not being negative about it. This is what happens, and I know this is going to happen. This is a free event. And because it's free, I think there are some people who don't commit as seriously as others. What I mean by that is, sure, back a month ago when I posted this, that I was going to have this retreat, I got an overwhelming response. Within 24 hours, I was almost full. Okay, that was great. That's why I started the waiting list. But it was free, so people didn't have to think twice about it. But here's wherein lies the problem for me as an organizer. So suddenly then I get people who are canceling because life happened. Something else came up, which for them was a higher priority than the retreat. Fine. People sent me a note about that, and that's great. Some people gave me a reason. Some people just simply said, I'm sorry, I can't attend. That's fine. I don't need to know the reason. Okay, I'm not prying into your personal life or anything like that. And so, as I said, I did my procedure, put in the next waiting list person. Now, in some cases, now that we're getting closer to the deadline for that, which is today, I put in a person on the waiting list, and they sent me back a message and said, yeah, because I wasn't scheduled in it originally, I made other plans. Yeah, that happens. I get that too. So fine. I thank them for letting me know. I go down to the next name on the list. But I think you can see this is all a lot of paperwork. Okay? And every step of the way, things can get screwed up. And as I said, I'm a very organized person, and I don't want anything to be screwed up. The thing, though, that'll get my goat is now, after today, the deadline's up, I am still, I know, going to get one or two people or whatever that are going to cancel. Fine. My problem now is I have to decide. If someone cancels on Thursday, and this thing's on Saturday, do I put a person on the waiting list onto the registration list and send them the information? Because that's pretty short notice. Maybe that'll work, maybe it won't work. I will have to see about that. Because, really, I would like to accommodate as many people as I possibly can with this. But as we get closer to the date, it becomes more of a crunch in terms of time and organization. The other thing I'm a little worried about is on the day of, as people sign in for the retreat, there'll be a few people who just will be no-shows. And in fact, I'm expecting that there will be some people that are no-shows. That'll get my goat a little bit. I mean, it could have been an emergency. Something happened that is just way beyond anybody's control. And if that's the case, well, yeah, what can you do about that? But if it's a case, and this brings me back to my point, where, oh yeah, I signed up for it, but something better came along and, it's free anyway, so it's not a big deal. Yeah, it is a big deal. Even though it's free, it's a big deal. A big deal from me on an organizational point. But things happen. What I would say to keep my blood pressure down is if you're one of those people that's signed up already and then suddenly you can't go, in that case, I would appreciate a reason. I've got to take the dog to the vet. It's very, very sick. It was throwing up all night or something. Okay, I love animals. Yeah, I get that. My long-lost brother came in from out of town and I haven't seen him in 20 years. Yeah, I get that. Okay? And heaven forbid it's something much more, devastating for you. Okay, I get that. If you tell me, I don't want to pry, but at that point, when you get a message that says, oh yeah, sorry, I can't attend, you kind of, well, think about it. I'm sure everybody's about the same. You kind of grumble to yourself. Okay? So anyways, because it's free, I think there are those individuals, I hope not many, who figure, yeah, it doesn't really matter. So I'm not there. No one's making money, losing money, or anything like that. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it does. It does matter. Now, I go back to the no-show. I'm going to keep a list on my master registration list. And you might not like to hear this, but I am going to do it. I'm a statistics person, kind of. And I'm going to note that on my master registration list that this person was a no-show. Now, I'm going to use the master registration list down the road, a few months' time. If this is successful, I may run another one of these. And I will use that registration list as my foundation group. Basically, I'm thinking, now this is just thinking out loud, that I will send out the invitation to the next retreat to those people that attended this retreat. And I will give them a time limit to let me know if they're interested in going to the next one. And they will be the people who will go on my list first. People, and then after that, after the deadline date for that, and that deadline date will be maybe 24 hours, 48 hours, something like that, I will open it up to everybody again and do the same procedure, you know. Once the registration list gets filled, I go to a waiting list. So that's one thing. So those people that I have noted that were no-show and I heard nothing from them about it, they won't get that invitation. Okay? Well, why, you would say? Well, once burned, twice whatever the saying is, you know. At that point, my impression of that individual, I'm sorry, I don't know these people. My impression of an individual is, yeah, this might be a habit for them, this no-show business or whatever. The other thing I'm thinking of doing is just a thought. Put your money where your mouth is. I am thinking to make it a little bit more serious of charging a registration fee that is non-refundable. Probably like $5. Okay. So if you want to be on the list and you pay the pre-registration or the registration fee that's non-refundable, $5, and we go from there. And I can use that money to buy prizes, is the way I look at it. Because that's another thing down the road I'm thinking about is, do I go back to the same sponsors? I don't think I can. I don't want to put the burden on them again. Can I find new sponsors? I might be able to. I don't know. So none of this is written in concrete, of course. This is just, I'm just thinking out loud right now. It's all going to depend on how this one works. If this one's a disaster, I won't be running another one. I don't think it's going to be a disaster. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a crazy day for me and Walter, but I want it to make it a really pleasant day for everybody else. And it's not going to be unpleasant for me either. It's just that there's a lot of stuff I have to do behind the scenes while everybody is busily working on their projects. So that takes us pretty much up to date. After I have finished my vlog today, I will be sending out a major email to all the registered people that has etiquette, some tips and tricks, and the most important thing, the Zoom link for getting on to the retreat site. So if you are registered, watch for that coming out later today to your mailbox. Okay, so I think that brings you up to speed with what my plans are for the retreat, so we can move on. So, did I buy something new this week? Oh, yes. Oh, yes, major. Now, if you watched Stephen and Walter live yesterday, as I've already mentioned, I talked about my problems again with the Janome 15,000. So, essentially, long story short, because I did go into it in a little bit more detail on Stephen and Walter Live, and I will go into a lot more detail about things with that on tomorrow's Idiot Quilter. But to say the least, I am completely done with the 15,000. I now am a proud owner of a Continental M7 by Janome and a 550E embroidery machine. Actually, I don't have the 550E embroidery machine. It's on back order. It's supposed to be coming in about May. I'm using Walter's right now, mainly because he's too busy doing garments at the moment. So I'm using his to get used to this new machine. The M7 is a great machine. I am in love with it, and I hope my love affair with it lasts forever. It is a machine dedicated to quilting. It has the widest throat of any of the domestic machines Janome makes. It's 13.5 inches. I am just dying to start quilting with it, and my plan for later today is to layer another UFO and probably today or tomorrow start quilting it and see how this baby works. It's a great machine. So if you're interested in more details about what kind of deal I got, how much I love Shirley in all of this, because Shirley was just wonderful, I am going to talk all about that on the Idiot Quilter tomorrow. But needless to say, those are my two new babies. So, yeah. Okay, so what's that take us to? Stories about my grandmother. Well, I'll keep this one short today. It's not so much about my grandmother as it is about my father's dog. In 1957, my father claimed that he got 3 new things that year. He got a new car, a new kid, me, and a new dog. Not necessarily in that order. I think the car and the dog came ahead of me, but whatever. The dog my father had, he named Lindy. I think he named the dog after the Lindy Hop, which was a dance, okay? Dance during the World War II, actually, the 40s. But anyways, the dog's name was Lindy. It was a female black Labrador. Big dog. Big, fat dog. This dog was fat, okay? And it was kind of a mangy creature. This dog did not like children. It nipped at me when I was about 3 years old or something like that. And I was always half afraid of Lindy to a point, probably because of that. Lindy got shipped around a lot. Maybe that's why Lindy was miserable. My father in those days, in the early days when I was, in kindergarten and grade 1 and that, my father worked for the Ontario Hydro, and he was a lineman, a journeyman lineman, people who climb the poles and everything like that. But he was on something called the traveling crew. The traveling crew was a bunch of guys on hydro that went to different areas of the province to build electrical towers at that time. And that was a time they didn't really use helicopters. Today I think they use helicopters in that for setting the pieces together. My dad climbed those towers, and put them together. But because it was the traveling crew, they would be moved around to different towns in southern Ontario. So we started off in the town I was born in, Campbellford, but we soon moved to Kingston, which you've heard me mention Kingston before. It's a town here in Ontario that's about 2 hours drive east of where I live here. Anyways, we lived there for a while, and then we were moved to Cobourg. So when we lived in Kingston, my dad couldn't have the dog because we lived in an apartment, a building, a small little apartment building that had 3 apartments. And I guess he couldn't have the dog there. Also, I think the problem was too, dogs need to be walked. My dad was away from home for extended periods of time. Like he'd be in another town working, and they'd board them out to some local house or hotel or something like that for a week at a time, kind of a thing. So that was just left my mother with a small child, me, and I think it might have been a little bit much for my mother to look after a great big huge 100-pound black lab as well. So it went to my grandmother's, and that's where Lindy lived. Lindy lived most of her life, I think, with my grandmother. When we moved to Cobourg, I don't think my dad I don't remember Lindy being with us when we moved to Cobourg. I think the same reason, they were renting a house in Cobourg at that point in time. And again, my dad was still in the traveling crew, so, he was away from home for extended periods of time. So the dog essentially lived with my grandmother. My grandmother loved animals. She loved dogs. She had dogs of her own, and you've already heard about Poonie. But I think she made she made Lindy a doghouse. Okay. Now Lindy was brought into the house during the night, but during the warmer months of the year, Lindy lived outdoors for most of the day, and she had a long leash. To me, it was a long leash that had a screw thing that went in the ground, and that's what you attached the leash to, and the dog could wander around wherever they want, do their business. You had to watch that. As a kid, go down to my grandmother's, and there'd be a pile of Lindy poop here and there. And so when you're playing in the yard, my grandmother would say, watch out over there. She hadn't got around to cleaning it up yet. So, it's a little kid running around in bare feet, and you hit something warm and oozy on your toes. It was either mud or, So, anyways, my grandmother made the dog a doghouse. Now, my grandmother, amongst other things, she was an artist, a hairdresser. She did everything. She was also a carpenter, a really good carpenter. She was renovating her kitchen, putting in new counters, new cabinetry, and she'd pulled out the old sink cabinet from the kitchen when she was renovating it and had thrown it out into the backyard. Well, she decided that with some renovation, that would make a really great doghouse for Lindy. It was a big doghouse, okay, because Lindy was a big dog. So she converted this thing into a really nice doghouse. She put a peaked roof on it. She shingled it, the whole bit. It was a very comfortable doghouse. Now you might say, well, how do you know it was a comfortable doghouse? Because I used to play in it all the time. When I was at my grandmother's, Lindy would usually not be in her doghouse. She'd be outside of it, laying in the sun, kind of a thing, as dogs like to do. So the girls next door that I've already mentioned before, that I used to hang out with, and we were just little kids then, we'd all climb in to Lindy's doghouse, and it became a playhouse. Now, okay, I said it was big, but it wasn't that big. You couldn't stand up in it. In fact, you didn't want to stand up in it because all the nails from the shingles that my grandmother had used were coming through the roof. And we did occasionally stand up and you'd get stabbed in the back, you stabbed in the head, whatever. But we were little kids, we didn't care. Yeah, big deal. We'd all laugh. Ha, isn't that funny? When a nail going right through your head. Sadistic bunch of children, but it was sort of rural living, okay? And we'd be in there and we would take in our crayons and we drew on the walls inside of Lindy's doghouse. And we had like these little imaginary windows we drew with scenes in it. And the house was big enough in there inside that we could put up about 4 of these windows, 2 on each side. And we drew whatever we wanted to. One of the pictures was with my grandmother coming out of the house with the cat and 9 tails. Okay, you're going to go, a cat and 9 tails? What was this lady into? No, that was the disciplinary equipment that we were threatened with. My grandmother never used it on any of us, but she had used it on her own children, on her 2 boys, my father being one of them. And my father did inherit that, and well, that's a tale for another day. I don't want you to think there was child abuse here. It wasn't, but it was a different time. I mean, I'm talking the early 60s. You know, people did beat their children, corporal punishment kind of a thing. But that was one of the things that someone drew on there. It was more or less, we thought, funny, you know. Now, my grandmother didn't like us being in the doghouse. She'd come out, and that may have but was the inspiration for this picture. She'd come out and she'd yell at us. She'd say, "You kids get out of that dog's house. It's filthy. Don't be in that filthy dog house." Well, yeah, it probably was, because Lindy shed. There'd be dog hair, and she'd go in there if she had muddy paws or whatever. But we didn't care as kids. We thought it was cool. You know, we had this little house to live in. Now, we eventually moved to another town, only about 20 minutes away from where my grandmother lived or so. And it was a very rural kind of town. In this town, in the house that my parents were in then, they could have Lindy with them there. So Lindy got transported from my grandmother's house to live with us, and the doghouse came as well. And we, as kids in the neighborhood, every summer, we'd kick the dog. In those days, Lindy was getting old and mangier as well, and fatter. And so we'd go in and we'd kick her out of her doghouse. And this dog weighed over 100 pounds, okay? It was a big dog. And we'd be tugging at her collar and that and pushing the poor old thing out into the yard so we'd get in her house and play. Lindy, I don't remember ever put up much of a fuss at that point. She was just too old to bother. So she just flopped down on the grass and there she was. She was not a nice dog. But, you know, when I think back on it, we weren't really nice to her dog either. But again, and eventually, well, Lindy passed on. But the doghouse remained, and we had that doghouse forever. But it was something, I think, where I realized that my grandmother was a very talented woman. I mean, she did paint, and I'm going to talk about her paintings, because I have one of them here in the house, and I'm going to talk about it one day. But she painted. She could do people's hair, both men and women. She used to have her own little hair salon back in the 30s, I think, way before my time. She was a musician. She was always into high-tech technology of the day. That always, she was always fascinated with that kind of stuff, the newest things. She loved to shop. That's another story, too. She was a great cook, and she was a carpenter. She rebuilt her whole kitchen, remodeled the whole thing herself, cabinetry, the whole bit. She was an amazing. Oh, and she stuffed animals, too. Oops, knocking things over. Ooh, light is coming through that window, and I'm getting a little bit of a glare. Let's see if I can do something about that. With the time change, the sun's here a little bit more. So sorry, I'm going to be a little bit on the fuzzy side right now. But anyways, so yeah, that's all about Lindy and my grandmother. Okay, so what's that take us to now? 3D corner. Okay, this is really, I don't know if you're seeing this or it's just me. Just bear with me for a second. I'm just adjusting the iPad and hoping to get, okay, maybe there isn't any glare. Okay, if there is, I'm sorry about it. That's a little better. Okay, so 3D corner. Yeah, I've been busy. And I've been learning some things too. So, Easter's coming. So I made this cute little bunny. Now he's made out of white. Okay. And seeing the, ooh, he's blaring out here. The details aren't so easy, but I told you last week that I bought this new filament, PETG, and I made them out of that, the translucent blue, and I think that's really sharp. And they're cute. They're cute. They're sitting upstairs right now on one of my end tables. They're what I call Easter decorations, the two of them. So I made those. I also made a new flower pot. I've got a philodendron upstairs that I'm rooting. I've been rooting philodendrons during COVID from this big philodendron that we have upstairs. My idea originally was to put philodendrons in my mother's room at the nursing home when this thing is over, not thinking it was going to go for this length of time, just to decorate a room. Plus, philodendrons are hard plants to kill. I have really good luck with philodendrons, and my mother doesn't water anything. So I thought, once a week when I'm over there to visit her, or my sister, we give it a little water. So I thought I'd make her some nice little pots. Well, I don't know if I'm going to give them to her now because first of all, I can't, because we still can't go over and physically meet with her, and she's soon going to move, hopefully, into the new place, so we'll have to put that on hold. But in the meanwhile, they're thriving. They're doing really well. So I need another pot. Yes, I could go to the dollar store and buy a flower pot, but when I can make it, why not? So I did. This is out of the copper, and I think it's really kind of cool. Now, it took a while to make. I think this one was a 24-hour print. And then, out of the same stuff, the copper, Walter and I have gotten into this, having an ice cream cone every now and then. Now, I mentioned last week, I think, how much I love ice cream. Walter's not as big on ice cream as I am, but I don't keep it in the house because I'd eat the whole thing. The heck with a cone. Just give me the whole container and I'll just bury my face in it. And that's not particularly good. So we got some ice cream cones, and Walter makes me and himself an ice cream cone every now and then in the evening. So he uses those sugar cones, right, with the point on them. And I saw on Thingiverse an ice cream cone holder. So I made a couple of these. And they work pretty good. You just put the ice cream cone in there and you fill it up, and there you are. You're not balancing it, and especially when you're trying to make more than one. So yeah, practical 3D prints. And then I did this. I'm not interested in figurines. A lot of people with their 3D printers make figurines. I made a Mandalorian. Now, I really don't know who the Mandalorian is. I know it's some spin-off from Star Wars. I'm not a Star Wars fan. Yeah, they're okay movies, but I'm not into it like some people are. But I thought I wanted to see how well it would make a figurine. And he's in gold, and it came out pretty good. Only one problem. This was a long print. I will let the print go overnight. But before Walter goes to bed, he doesn't go to bed till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I go to bed at 9 o'clock, kind of a deal. He comes down to see if whatever I'm printing is done and turn off the printer. Well, he says to me the other morning, that lighting is driving me nuts. I hope it's not coming on here, but anyways, he said, okay, the Mandalorian finished, except one little problem. Just as it was at 99% in the print, the sword fell off, this thing, he said. I guess something happened, it hit the top of this and it just broke it off. But it was a clean break, so I was able to glue gun it back on and it's fine now. So yeah, I'm not interested in the figurines, but I want to see what the printer would do, and it did a really good job. So, you know, a lot of detail on this. And then yesterday, and this is where I learned something, I decided to do a vase. I saw this vase, I thought it was really a neat design, and so I printed this. Now, when I first started printing this, it wasn't hollow. It was filling it in. It was going to be a solid piece, and it was going to take 28 hours to print. And I'm thinking, well, wait. On my slicer program on the computer, it looks like it's hollow. Why isn't it doing it hollow? Then I thought, well, I've mixed up something. So I went in, unmixed it, or thought I had, started printing it again. And after about half an hour, I realized, nope, it's not going to be hollow. It's going to be solid. So I did a little research, and I found out there's something that people refer to as vase mode. Vase mode. And if you set certain settings in the slicer program that, you know, allows you to print these kind of things, you will get a hollowed. So yeah, and it only took 4 hours to print as opposed to 28 hours. Now it is kind of thin. Actually, though, it's very strong, but it's got a little flex to it. So I'm thinking today, there was another design I really liked, and I had the same problem until I figured out what I was doing wrong. I'm going to go in and put the settings for it to hollow it out and see what it looks like as well. This is made out of the one called marble. I did the Shakespeare statue in marble. I like the marble because it looks like marble. It looks like stone. But anyways, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. It's watertight. I could use it as a planter as well. We'll see. Okay, so that I think is all that I've been 3D printing. It is. Still having fun with it. And that takes me to my current project. Again, the part 6 of the fabric sculpture. While I'm waiting for the paint and the texture paste to dry on that last layer, I want to prep these 4 pieces of fabric so that I can do some die cutting with these. And there's a hint in this fabric as to what I might be going to die cut out, but I'm not going to tell you what that is. So I'm going to get out my stiffy again, and I'm going to apply it with my brush to each of these pieces of fabric. And then I'm just going to let them sit flat and dry. Now this won't give me as much stiffness as I think I'm going to probably want, but this will be a start. And I'm just going to let them air dry. And I'm saturating them, as you can see. Now I did press these with an iron when I pulled them out of my scrap bin, because I wanted them to stay relatively flat. So you can see as I'm putting the stiffy onto this, I am sort of brushing in up and down straight motions, because I don't really want any wrinkles in this at all. Right now, anyways, I just had a thought. With what I'm going to do with these, maybe some wrinkles might look very good. But I have another idea for putting those in rather than just crumpling up the fabric. We'll see. We'll see. As I said, this is a very how do you say that? This is an improv piece. What I mean by that is I'm making it up as I go along. In fact, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do after I put the crumpled fabric onto the canvas and let it dry. But I had an idea that came to me this morning, and that's often how these things work. And I don't tend to plan my art, out in a lot of detail. I just like it to develop organically. That's a word that people seem to use with art these days a lot. I think it's overused myself, but I think you know what I mean. To me, that means that something it just happened. It just came to mind when I wasn't really thinking about it. And you know, that's a good thing, I think, because it really does free you. Because art is supposed to be enjoyable. And if you get all uptight about trying to create a definite vision, I suppose that has its place in the art world. But for me, I don't really consider myself an artist. I'm a crafter. And although a lot of people would debate about that as if, is there any difference between the two? And no, it's all art. But it's a different approach to art, I think, as a crafter. Okay, so I've got my stiffy all on those layers. I'm just going to go away. I'm going to let it dry. And then I'll show you what I'm going to do next. Okay, so I think next week is the last installment of the fabric sculpture, and then we move on to a new project. And you'll notice I just changed the perspective of my iPad. So that glare from the window coming in, the streaming sunlight, which is really nice to have, streaming sunlight, it's not really good when you are doing a video. So I have angled myself a little bit over here, and this feels a little awkward for me, but anyways, you get a nice view of my stained glass window that Walter created for my studio and my computer setup. That's what I was talking about yesterday. My laptop's below and then the big screen there, and this is why we were having trouble figuring out how to position the camera so we could see the comments and at the same time, you know, not look like we were looking upwards or downwards all the time. Anyways, I see that the light is going to fluctuate now a little bit. Bear with me. I wish I had a room that I could build just as a studio, but I'm running out of rooms. Okay, so events in the past week. Update on my mother. She is fine, but yesterday I got a text message from my brother out in BC. My brother and I do not talk very often with each other. That's a story for another time. I think I may have told the story, but you know, over the last little while we've maintained some better contact than we've had for years, really. But anyways, he had texted me to say he was trying to get a hold of my mother and wanted to know if her number had changed because he wasn't getting an answer. Well, I laughed because you know the story with my mother and telephones. She doesn't answer them. So I explained that to my brother, told him about the FaceTime thing. It's a little bit more awkward for him given the hours that they do FaceTime at the nursing home, and then he's 3 hours behind us. And plus he's working still as well because he works for BC Hydro. So anyways, yeah, when I talk to Mom tomorrow, I will say to him, by the way, your other son has been trying to get a hold of you, but you don't answer your phone. And I'll get the answer from her. Yeah, I know. Well, Mom, you need to pick up the phone. Yeah, I should do that, but she won't. And I told my brother that. So I don't know. Write her a letter. She probably won't bother to open that up either. But whatever, she's fine. So there hasn't been a heck of a lot going on this past week. I already talked about the retreat. That's been keeping me busy. Quilting that quilt was keeping me busy. Working on my 3D prints was keeping me busy. Fighting with my sewing machines was keeping me busy. So yes, there wasn't much going on that you'd be interested in. But I did go out and I got 2 things done. I got my hair cut. Yes. And that always makes me happy. Of course, we're still doing it, you know, one person in the salon at a time kind of a thing, which is fine. We still have to be safe. And blood work. Wondered how they were going to do that, and I mentioned that last week. Well, they were fairly efficient at keeping people separated and whatnot. You could call ahead and they would, it was kind of a stupid system. Walter called ahead to see what the wait time was, and you book yourself in. But you don't book yourself in for a specific time. It basically tells you, okay, you've got about a 10-minute wait, 15-minute wait when you get here. Well, the problem is they consider that Walter went online first thing in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, and said, yeah, wait time's 3 minutes. We live 10 minutes away from the place you have to go to. So I said, the hell with it. Let's just go. We got there. There wasn't too many people ahead of us. The line was moving fairly quickly. You had to go in, you had to be screened, you know, the COVID questions, the whole bit. Then you went down and stood in line 6 feet apart from everybody else to go to the desk, to register, to have your blood work done, give them the form, all that kind of stuff. And then you went to a designated waiting area where all the chairs were 6 feet apart and whatnot, and sat down and waited for them to call your name. It was fairly efficient, and although they were relatively busy, it was moving along quite quickly. So the only thing I got a little worried about was there was a couple of people that I was ahead of when I got in there, and they got in before I did. And then I heard the receptionist or the person taking the information say to them, and did you use the online system? And they said yes. And she says, oh yes, I see that here. She never asked me that question. And Walter got in ahead of me as well, which is fine, but they asked him about it and he said yes. Well, their system's kind of stupid. It says, how many people are you coming with? Walter had put in 2, but it doesn't ask for the name of the second person. I didn't realize that. She did not ask me that question. And so anyways, but it wasn't a big wait. I got in after those other 2 people and that was fine. And the one taking my blood, she was talking my ear off about this, that, and the other thing, about her older son had moved back home during COVID, wish he'd get a shed and make it into a man cave to get him out of the house, went on and on and on, but in the meantime, she's jabbing me and got the blood. So now I'm waiting for the results. I'm waiting for my doctor's office to call me and say, yeah, they'd like to see me. I do have a cholesterol problem, but I've had that for years and it's controlled by medication. And it's not a biggie. I'm on a very low amount of my Crestor, which is the medication. I do have a blood pressure problem. Again, I don't think it's that severe. She's got me on something for that. My doctor's very thorough and drives me nuts. And she did a PSA test, which for men is a prostate test, right? And if you're a man, you will know what I'm talking about, you know, the old digital exam kind of a thing. But they have this other blood test they can do as well. And you pay for that. Okay, it's not covered by our insurance here in Ontario. We have to pay $33 for that. So that is something I'm a little concerned about because of my age. Also, I am sure she probably wants me to go and have a colonoscopy soon. I've had them before. I've had 2 of them. Well, I don't like doctors, okay? Nothing personal. I just don't like them. I don't like the medical community. I know we have to go to them. I know we need them and everything like that. It's just, I don't like them because it's like taking your car into a mechanic for one thing. They always find something else wrong. It's never good news from a doctor, at least in my experience. But we'll see. We'll see. Walter already knows the results of his blood test because he pays a small fee for this thing he hooks up to electronically, which gets my goat, because in Ontario, we should not have to be paying for this kind of stuff at all, because our healthcare system is different than it is in other places in the world. It's covered in our taxes. But for this, he pays like, I don't know, it's not a lot, but he can go in and see his blood results. And to me, I don't know what those numbers mean, but Walter has educated himself. He does. And so he was checking that all out. And his blood stuff, he said, was pretty good, he thought. So anyways, we'll see. I'm expecting I'm going to hear from the doctor this week. Okay, so that was the highlight. So Walter was cooking again this week. And so here's the latest episode of Wally Cooks.
So this week on Wally Cooks, he's setting the table right now. Over in the Instapot, as you can see, he has got pea soup in it. And besides peas, what makes your pea soup gourmet?
It's got leftover pork in it from a few days ago, and some ham in it, and it's got green peas and yellow peas in it.
Ooh, it's gourmet. And with all that pork and ham in it, I think it's pig pea soup. We're having pig pea soup.
And then we're having garlic bread and salad.
Ooh, salad. And what kind of salad are we having?
We're having a different kind of Caesar salad because it's going to have blue cheese dressing instead of Caesar dressing in it.
Ooh, gourmet again. That's what Wally cooks. So, this is the end result of the pig pea soup. Looks thick and juicy. As we used to call it as kids, slimy pea. It's slimy pea soup. And what do you got over here? Oh, your garlic bread. Well, a nice meal on a cold winter's-like day. Although today's been about 7 degrees. I'm getting your back.
Yeah, well. Sloppy.
Sloppy. So, Wally has a tip for cooking. You might know your béarnaise sauce is a little old when it looks like that.
Oh, fuzzy.
Ew.
And I think that's everything from me for now. And yep, back to getting the retreat things up and going, and looking forward to that. And I hope you are too if you're registered for it. And so next week we'll talk about the aftermath of the retreat and let you know how things went from there. So I hope you have a great week. I hope you are happy, stay healthy, stay in just for a little bit longer just to make sure. Okay, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.